Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to go over some basic graphing calculator skills that will hopefully help you when you're using your graphing calculator in class today to find solutions to quadratic equations or to other equations just in general. So we're going to start, and you're going to just turn your calculator on. And whenever you're trying to graph anything, you're going to start off with this y equals button, and maybe you found your way there before, or maybe not, but we're going to press it, and you'll see that when I get there, there are a bunch of y's all the way down, so y1, y2, y3, y4, y5, all the way to y10. And this represents, each of these represents a potential line that you could graph. So you can graph up to 10 different lines at one time if you wanted to. But today we're going to focus on a max of 2 lines. So we're going to start off by graphing this equation, y equals x squared minus 20. And I want to find the zeros, or the intercepts. I'm going to write that down. Zeros or the intercepts to x-intercepts to that equation. So to start us off, when we're using our graphing calculator to graph something like this, whenever we've got a variable, and this can be x, eventually it might look like a theta, so this kind of O with a line through it. This button right here where it says xt theta n, these represent any of the variables that you might want to use when you're graphing a line. So I'm going to press this button to get an x up there, and this represents the same x that I've got in my equation. So I want to square it to the power of 2 minus 20. Whenever we're graphing to get us into a good or a standard viewing window, before we hit graph, we're going to press zoom. And then we want to activate zoom standard so that wherever we were, in whatever viewing window we were previously, we're now shifting over to a normal viewing window. So I'm going to press the number 6 to activate Z standard. Okay, so now I can see my kind of parabola looking shape. But I can recognize that there's something going on down here in the graph that I cannot see. So I'm going to think for a second about my parent functions. So I've got an x squared, and I'm subtracting 20 from it on the outside. And so it doesn't really look like anything's going on too far along my x-axis that I need to see. It's my y-axis that I want to see more of. And so I want to see further down on my y-axis. So I've got to adjust my viewing window a little bit. So I'm going to go to Window. Whenever you use Zoom Standard, it automatically sets your window to be from negative 10 to positive 10 on your x-axis, and from negative 10 to positive 10 on your y-axis. Just looking back at my graph, so this is negative 10 to positive 10, negative 10 to positive 10. I want to see more or further down on my y-axis. So I want to adjust my y minimum because that's my lower set of y values. And maybe I want to see all the way down to negative 25. Let's go ahead and graph and see what that shows us. Okay, so now I can see the full shape of the parabola. That's going to be helpful in future units, just to be able to see what is going on with your graph. I noticed that the tick marks on my graph got a little bit closer together. They're kind of smudged. And so I kind of want them to look like what my x-axis looks like. So right now, right below your x min and max, y min and max, there's this thing called x scale or y scale. And that's telling you how much each tick mark is worth. So on my x-axis, each tick mark is worth one value, and it's very easy to see what those values are. On the y-axis right now, each tick mark is also worth one value. But because I've got so many values on that little screen, it's kind of smudged together. So I'm going to change my x scale to just a larger number. I'm going to go with 2 and see if that looks a little bit better. Great. So now I can see it's a lot clearer. If I wanted to count lines, I definitely could. So we're going to go into finding the zeros or finding the solutions to this equation. So this is exactly like setting this equation equal to 0 and factoring it out or using the quadratic formula to find my roots. But my calculator can do that for me. The way to activate it is in this blue calc section right above the button trace. To activate those blue letters, I'm going to press second and then calc. And you'll see that right below I've got this nice 0 value. So I'm going to go down to number 2 or press the number 2. And then my calculator is going to ask me a series of questions in order to find the zeros. So first it asks for a left bound. So I've got to pick one of the zeros that I want to calculate, either this one or this one. I'm going to go with the left one first. So a left bound means I have to go all the way to the left of the 0. So I'm going to just sketch this out off to the side. If this is my 0, I need to pick a point that's to the left of it. So it needs to be above the x-axis. So I'm going to press my left arrow until I get above the x-axis. And I'm going to press enter once I get to any point that's just above the x-axis. I can tell it's above the x-axis because my y value down here is positive. So I'm going to press enter. Now it asks me for a right bound. So for a right bound, I've got to pick a value that's to the right of the 0 or below my y-axis. Sorry, my x-axis. Once I've got that value, I'm going to press enter. And now my calculator wants me to guess. So you can see it's got these two little arrows up here where my left bound and my right bound are, and it's going to guess to that point in the middle. I want it to, so I'm going to press enter one more time. And it gives me my 0. So I've got a 0 at x equals negative 4.472. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for my second 0 a little bit faster. So I'm going to go second, calc, 0. And then I've got to find a left bound. So again, this has to be to the left of the curve. So on this side of my graph, to the left of the curve is below the y-axis. It kind of changes. Now I've got to find a right bound. I'm going to go up, hit enter for guess, and I find that I've got another 0 at 4.472. And so those will be my two zeros. At this point, if you've got it and you're feeling good, you can pause the video. I'm going to go through some troubleshooting things in case something comes up where it doesn't work. So if, let's say I'm trying to find a 0 and I pick a left bound and a right bound, but I don't go far enough on my right bound. I don't cross over my x-axis to go into the positives. If I do that, my calculator is going to give me an error. No sign change. No sign change means that I didn't choose a y value, or my first y value was negative and my second y value was negative. But when we're doing this, we've got to have a positive y value and a negative y value. Or y1 can be negative and y2 can be positive. And that's the main issue that'll come up with calculating your zeros. You've got to make sure that you cross over the x-axis and pick 2 points on either side. That's it. Let me know if you've got any questions or if something isn't working for you. And after you watch this, you're going to watch the the intersection method videos.